Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, December 7th, Scarborough Board of Education Business Meeting. Diane, can you call the attendance, please?
Sure. Mrs. Gammon,
Here.
Mr. Kelleher,
Here.
Miss Leong,
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian,
Here.
Mr. Peenyhoff, here, Mr. Shumway, and Miss Leisure.
Here. Thank you. Agenda item 3.0 is a pledge. Would everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, agenda item 4.0 are adjustments to the agenda. I do have one adjustment. We are going to remove agenda item 6.0, which is the Spotlight Award. So do I have a motion to adjust?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we'll remove that. So the superintendent report will be the new 6 and then down. All right. Agenda item 5.0 are public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? Anything online? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment. Agenda item 6.0 is the superintendent report. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
All right, I just have one quick slide here. First, we bring up, and I've actually included just a few links for anyone who's accessing the slides online. This first part, we did receive approval of the waiver that we sent about with respect to the school closures on October 26th and 27th. Following the shooting in Lewiston. So that approval, that waiver has been approved, which means those are not days that we will need to make up. So we're still, knock on wood, still no storm days. But we're status quo essentially as far as the school calendar is concerned on having to make up those additional days that we needed to close. So and I've included a link to the waiver letter that was sent to the Department of Education and approved by the Deputy Commissioner. So next, I just had a couple, I know our last meeting we had fall athletic recognitions. There were 2 additional individual recognitions in the Portland Press Herald for a coach of the year, which our golf coach, Mike Murphy, earned. And then also 2 individual athletes of the year, Lana Legend, our girls soccer player, senior, and Mark Twombly, our #1 golfer on the golf team. So I would love to have a nickname like Lana Legend. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight those. And I've also provided links to the articles that were in the Press Herald for those individual recognitions of our athletes from the fall. And then finally, just wanted to highlight that we've started meeting, our leadership council meetings have turned to, I can't believe I'm saying this, fiscal year 25 budget process, and starting to talk about preliminary discussions and you know, we're obviously hearing and working a lot with our wonderful Kate Bolton around enrollment projections, possible what the outlook looks like in terms of state subsidy, and start really kind of digging into our needs at the school level and district wide to start building the budget and kick off the budget process for this year. So that's occupying our time at leadership council meetings.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Is there any questions for Jeff? Any comments? I feel like you've cursed us to a hardcore winner now.
Right.
All right, thank you. Agenda item 7.0 is the chair's report. I also just have a very quick update. Everything I would be discussing is really on the agenda for later on. So the only thing I have is on January 18th, it's our next workshop in the first of the new year. And we are going to hear from Katie, we're going to hear test results and updates on academic programming in the school, which is really special, really exciting. The other thing we are going to do though is spend about half an hour training on a new budget software program that will help us to organize a little bit better for meetings. It's one the town has already been utilizing. Minutes, agendas, supporting documentation, instead of it being in a drive that Cheryl has to create for every meeting, it'll be uploaded into the software much easier. So we're going to receive some training on that and then go into the presentation on the academic achievements and updates. So we will be starting that one at 5:30 to fit it all in. Great. Any questions for me? All right, so agenda item, oh goodness. 8.0 is sorry, I misnumbered. 8.0, thank you, are the committee reports. So we'll start with communications. Jenna?
Okay, so our last meeting was actually canceled. It was scheduled for 11. Because of scheduling conflicts. So our next meeting is December 14th, this week at 12 p.m. to 1 o'clock. Items that we want to discuss at our next meeting, joint forums with town council regarding the building.
Okay.
So sorry, should I repeat myself? So items that we want to discuss at our next meeting, joint forums with town council regarding the building project. I've invited April Seither to join us in our next comms meeting. So that way we can kind of figure out the logistics and hopefully get live forums going for the community. And then we are going to discuss the December Spotlight Award briefly, and then plan for the January Spotlight Award, and probably discuss how we can highlight Scarborough Public Schools achievements and try to find the best and most effective communication that we can for the community. In light of referendum, I think we have a lot of work to do in how we get information out and digestible information out. And then I'm also the next slide. So curriculum committee, we last met on 11/14, and Katie was also there. So at that meeting, Katie had reported that she finally received the spring 3-year assessment. And the plan was originally to send the results to families along with the fall 3-year assessment, since the data would be coming in very close together. So parents wouldn't feel like, what is all this information that you're giving me? Like, why am I getting so much back to back? However, at the time, she hadn't received the fall assessment results yet. And she was hoping to at least get the information out by the 17th, but we haven't updated it. Well, we haven't received an update yet. So we will be reviewing that next week on Tuesday, the 12th at 12 o'clock. And then you're going to hear the presentation in January at the workshop.
Very good, thank you. Is there any questions for Jenna on either curriculum or communications? One thought I have that, and I can touch base with you offline, but one thought I had rolling around last year that Jillian and I had actually spoken about, but of course with the school, it kind of fell by the, the thought of it fell by the wayside. But one thing to maybe think about when you think about highlighting Scarborough's achievements, I was thinking if there is a way to connect with the either the English teachers, the writing club at the high school, the yearbook club, and have the students actually write articles for our newsletter that highlights the achievements. So works with the committee to write articles that highlights the achievements. And then those are articles that we could put in our newsletter, put in the town newsletter, potentially send to the newspaper, right? And so now you've got students, you've given them like almost like a leadership activity, right? That they can use going forward as well.
I really like that idea. And
Yeah.
probably, gives that sense of belonging in the community also that we were just discussing.
Yeah, kind of like peers, and,
Yeah.
shouting out to their peers, like
Yeah, I love
the
that.
highlighting their peers. Yeah.
I will put that on there for next week.
Perfect. All right, finance.
Do I have to start over again? Okay, so no material changes from the financials presented earlier in the year. And Markham is set, Markham is our auditors, they're set to present the audit report to the town council on December 20th. So come and be riveted. Next, we talked about, or we did talk about too, I'll jump down to the bottom, survey funding. So we were wondering, do we have the funds available and where do we have them? And there are a few buckets we have if we want to move forward with a survey to find out what does the town support for a school project to meet the needs the district has. And there are a few buckets that we can draw upon. So that is covered. And then the bulk of our time was spent talking about state funding options for the potential new school renovations, whatever route we decide to go down. So there's 3 options for us outside of local funding. So if we wanted state funding, these are our options. First one is the major school construction program. And Diana, I look forward to you keeping me honest here if I misstate anything.
Sure.
You're gonna be my honest keeper. So the last time we applied for this was back in the 2017-2018 cycle. And that has been the last cycle that they have done. So we are first on the highest ranking we had, or the lowest ranking, I guess, we had on the list, closest to being completed was 8 Corners. And we ranked 34th with 8 Corners. And since 2017-2018 was done, the DOE is now funding number 6 and number 7 on the list. So even if we were to reapply, which I'm sure we will, it's pretty much a given. We may move down 6 or 7 spots, but we're not expecting to be like number 1 or number 2. We had discussions on, they're looking at potentially doing another round of rankings coming up next year. One thing, Diane, this is where I might need you a little bit. Not having enough educational space for students is not a compelling story or a need, according for this program. So, and they also do not include the use of portables
Correct.
in their assessment.
Yes.
So because we have a whole grade in portables, that doesn't mean it's not included in their assessment. So they overlook that completely. When we present the problem, we don't present a solution. They provide the solution under this program. And did I miss anything under that program?
No, I mean, I think the only thing that I would add is, as you look at major school construction projects, they really are around health and safety. So for example, schools in the state where there has been a concentrated mold in schools, where
They're condemned,
there
right?
are health risks to students, et cetera. So again, overcrowding isn't necessarily one of the things that gets you ranked more. And I think in our meeting, I had shared the example of, I happen to be Scarborough Middle School principal during the last ranking in 17-18. And I clearly remember taking the committee around the school so that I could highlight all of the shortcomings of the school along with Todd Jepson. And as I was preparing to take them out to the portables, they said, no, we're not going out there. And I said, well, why? We have 240 students out there. And, what was explained to us from Scott Brown, who is the person at the state, was that they don't even look at portables or include the fact that you have portables in how they rank the number of points that a school gets or doesn't get. So, Todd and I looked at each other and said, so we would have gained more points if we had 35 students in a classroom instead of having affordable. So yeah, so that is, because again, their high priority is really around health.
A second bucket we have to look at for state funding is called the School Revolving Renovation Fund. And this is for smaller projects, and you can get funding amounts, I believe is up to around $2 million. And the funding is based on what the town can afford. So leave it at that. These projects the nice thing about these projects, are there's 0 interest, 5 to 10-year terms on the repayment, and a portion of the loan is considered a grant and is forgiven. So how we would rank on the affordability part, it remains to be seen. But, then there is the last place of funding potential is called the Leased Space Program, and it's basically exactly as it sounds. If you find a place to lease because you don't have enough room, there's $500,000 available for that. So do you have any added color for that one? So that was the gist of our meeting. Kate wrote out a lot of commentary on each of these programs. If you want to go and visit the agenda, she puts all the notes in the agenda, and there's quite a bit of detail in there on these different programs. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to go and look there. As for our next meeting, realized last night that it's Christmas Day. So, yeah, I don't think we need to do that. And so I checked in with Kate, and she said there's nothing pressing, but we'll meet in January and we'll be reviewing the 2Q results. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. And the only thing I wanted to add is in the major school construction cycle, if the new ranking happens, not only do we need to reapply, but everybody else on the list or new people, also new school districts also need to apply. So it would be an entirely new process. Yeah.
How long does it take for that? I feel like that took like almost a year to come out. Okay.
It is a really lengthy process because
Mhm.
they have to physically go and visit every school site. And they rank them all against the same rubric. And so if you think about Maine being a large state in terms of the kind of area that it covers, and I believe in the last round, there were somewhere around 70 plus schools that had applied. And so they have to, set up dates to visit each of those schools.
Thank you, Diane. All right, Frayla, negotiations.
We're still working on setting up our first meetings, although we're trying really hard to get those underway. We've had some difficulty getting a response about those dates, but I think that's being addressed. And we will be doing some training for the committee members in January to get us prepared. But we got 3 contracts to do, so we need to get going.
You want to keep going?
Yeah, let's do it. Policy committee, our last meeting was on November 14th. We will be voting on some policies later on having to do with physical restraint, seclusion. Those were legal changes, and then compulsory school attendance, because the age what we had is different than the statutory age that was just passed. We also looked at truancy and wellness. We're going to continue looking at those, but I expect those to come up pretty soon. And then we're going back to our pre-2020A policies to go in order unless and until something comes up, and it seems like something always comes up. So we'll keep hitting the policies to update them as the statutes change, as the legislature gets cranking, and we'll review them. But my goal is to start reviewing all policies to make sure that we've looked at every single school policy pre-2020 that hasn't been looked at, to make sure they're updated. Next meeting is December 11th, 4 to 5:30. It's policy. It's a good time.
not do you, now that the council, I believe, has seated their new committees, maybe now is the time to go ahead and reach out and try to get that joint working session back together about the naming facilities.
Yeah, I had approached the prior chair of their policy committee
Mhm.
and we had sort of opened some discussions about making sure that we would like a facilities naming policy. Currently, all our facilities are owned by the town, so the town has control of naming the facilities. We would like input when those facilities are on school property. And so we are in the process of looking at other towns and what they have done. And also, I said that we would pull some of that information together, send it to the town committee for their consideration. And then we would, as a board, have to approve that, but it would be contingent on like town committee starting that process. So it's a joint effort. They seemed open to that, the new composition of that committee comes together. We'll see if they still are interested. I think what they said was if there's school buildings, that makes sense that the school board should have some input. And we're not trying to take over that process at all. We're just trying to make sure that we have a place where we can say, you know, this is in keeping with our values, or we have some concerns about this. So we can have that conversation. And we would like to see the town have a formal process so that anybody who's looking to name anything in the town we can point them to that direction. So when people come to us and ask about naming this, you know, this auditorium, that we have something to refer them to. That would be very helpful.
All right, any questions for Freyla on those two? All right, DEI, I'm not sure which.
I'll keep cranking. We talked about DEI for the last hour, if you were here. Jillian, can you throw something in my head and take over if you want? Our last meeting was also on November 14th. We had this phenomenal presentation on multilingual learners. I would encourage you to go back and look at the agenda. It was really interesting about the work the districts are doing to contend with all the languages coming into the district and talking to students and families who don't have English as a first language or even functionally fluent in English, and how they're really creatively engaging so that they're able to meet those students and families, which is just awesome. They're doing a lot of really good work. We spent the rest of the most of the meeting doing subcommittee work, which was probably pretty boring. We just broke into groups and are trying to work through things. I think the work this board is doing right now with the direction on the charge and the governance document will really inform that committee. And I think we'll see some action if we give them a specific charge, which obviously I spent the last hour advocating for. And we lost another community member and a staff member. So we're looking to seat another community member and staff member. We need to send out that information and see who's interested. Obviously, it's not a good season to be making asks of people to join committees. People are kind of distracted, but hopefully by next month, and under the new governance procedure, if it's adopted, we would be bringing those nominees to this board to officially, we would make a recommendation from the committee, and this board would formally vote to put them on the committee, which is something that had not been happening in the past.
Any questions? Freyla? All right. Liaison reports, are there any liaison reports this evening? Okay. Agenda item. Sorry, 9.0 is the student representative reports. So we'll move over to Grace.
All right, so throughout mid-November, the Oak Hill Players put on a fantastic production of the musical 42nd Street. They worked for long hours throughout many months. I believe it's about 3 months all together to put together this great show that ran for 7 performances.
And for the 3 primary schools in Wentworth, at Blue Points Community Meeting, students won their 3rd surprise reward, which was like pieing a teacher in the face. Pie. I don't know the word for it, but they won rewards from filling up a jar full of coins, and coins are earned by being safe, kind, and focused. And 2nd graders at the 3 K-2 schools have traveled or are going to soon travel to either Scarborough Public Works or the Public Safety Building to learn more about town services. And to celebrate the International Hour of Code, schools were engaged in Hour of Code activities to learn the foundational skills involved in coding.
Thank you, both of you. Is there any questions for Colby or for Grace? All right. Thank you. All right, agenda item, I'm gonna bundle 10.0 and 11.0, which is the Building Steering Committee governance document and the Building Steering Committee makeup, because quite frankly, all of the recommendations are contained in the document. So I would like to go ahead and draw our attention over to the document, and Jillian, do you want to take the lead on this discussion? Do you want me to take the lead? How do you want to do this about the meeting? Okay, so you just jump in if I forget anything, leave anything out. So where we are is, that the Building Steering Committee met. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes. They met last week, the week before last, and really had a great discussion about what they would like to see moving forward for the committee. There has been some attendance issues at meetings. There was a lack of participation on subcommittees for the greater committee. And what happened is that resulted in few people, I would say, right, doing majority of the work. And so one of the things that the committee members left really wanted to focus on is bringing more people to the table to help move this project forward. So ultimately where they ended up is what you can see in that DEI committee. They believe that the steering committee should be open up to anybody who A, puts in an application, B, can commit to an attendance policy, and C, can commit to serving on a subcommittee. And if you can do those three things, then they would like to include everybody. So that is what you see for the composition. So there wouldn't be a set number as of right yet, because we don't know how many, we know how many have expressed interest thus far, but we don't know when we open it up, how many would express interest. However, we then talk through, okay, well, if we do that, what does that look like? Like, how do you know what your majority is for quorum? How do you know, how do you set those numbers? And so what we decided, or what the committee decided to recommend, is that you have an application by a certain date. And when we have that number, then that becomes the committee size. So in other words, if we get 45 applications, the committee would be 45 people. So that's where they left. As if anything were to happen, some of these rules you'll notice in the document are very similar to the DEI committee rules in regards to attendance. So if they don't, failure to attend 3 consecutive meetings or 4 meetings in a year-long period would result or may result in removal. A member can indicate that they intend to resign at any time. So that's a very familiar, you'll notice it's a very familiar thing to you. So once that happens, if there are individuals that step down or can't, due to attendance, or removed, that would open up a new seat for someone to fill. All right. So I feel like probably the best thing to do with this is to take it in chunks and stop and answer questions along the way. So I'm going to take a pause right now. Is there anything, Jillian, in regards to the size that you think I, maybe left out or wanted to add to?
No, I think that you captured that well. Yeah, we are going to be voting on the composition, correct?
Yeah, so we would be voting, as it stands right now, we have an action item on this to act on the recommendation for the committee. So makeup. So we also have a separate item to act on the governance document. Knowing that the community has seen this, I'm of two minds. Knowing that the community has seen the document since Monday, I'm inclined to potentially hold off on that. However, personally, I would like to see us discuss and move forward the committee makeup so that work can get started. So it's a long-winded answer instead of just a yes or no.
All right.
All right. So is there any questions on the composition as I laid it out so far?
When's the next board meeting? I'm sorry, this committee meeting.
They're in a holding pattern until we.
So until we vote on this and
Yeah.
approve it, then they'll schedule the next meeting.
Yes, because, yes and no, because what the committee also said, and I thank you that I forgot, left this part out. Current members would also need to fill out an application. So there is not an expectation that, everybody that's currently serving wants to serve. In fact, we did hear, unfortunately, Dana 48 is going to step down. So, what they ended up deciding as a committee is that when this application process opens, that even the existing members would still reapply. So there's no meeting scheduled until we have made a decision and we've opened an application process if that's what we decide to do, because we have to sit a committee.
Is there like no limit on community members? Like it's just how many want to join?
Yep, absolutely.
It's a good idea.
Thanks.
And follow up to that, is there a reason why there's not a limit on the teachers on the composition?
So there's not a limit to anybody except for the school board members and the counselors.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we had, the teachers, would fall under the same umbrella. There wasn't a carve out for them. So if the teachers are interested in participating, they would also fill out an application. So we'd probably have to submit the same, when we open an application, it's probably something we could include in staff newsletter. Yeah. So
I just want to highlight that the 2 school board members and the 2 counselors, it seems artificial, but more than 3 members can't meet legally, like that becomes problematic. So like
Yeah.
that, whether that rule is 2 or not, that limitation exists in a law that is overarching ours. It's not our rule.
Mhm.
And forgive me, Shannon, if you answered this question already. So who reviews all the applications and decides?
So, typically, when the board seats a new committee, we would review, the board would do it in public at a public session, public meeting. We would review the applications and we would select, or we would select a, small nominating committee that could do it. Given that the committee is expressing an interest in opening it up to anybody, what we would essentially do is collect applications. And in that application, we would have to say, do you commit to this attendance policy? Do you commit to serving on a subcommittee? And if they can indicate yes, then they would be accepted. So we're not looking for a certain experience, or do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it would be anybody who wants to do it. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna keep on moving down if we're good there. Okay, what I want to move down to, because again, I think some of this are things that you notice, vacancies and removal. Again, you'll notice that that's very similar language. Attendance is very similar language. Officers is the next area. So there was a lot of discussion around this, and essentially where the committee landed is that officers, there would be a chair, a vice chair, and a recording secretary from the members. The chair's responsibilities are very similar, as you might imagine. They are the ones to be counted on to determine a quorum. The chair, the vice chair, the secretary has the same voting rights as everyone else in the committee. None of that changes. They are also responsible for ensuring the meeting information is posted to the website, in our timeframes that govern our policies that govern that. This includes the meeting agenda 3 days ahead, meeting minutes a week after, which is our board guidelines. So that's a piece of it. The second piece is the number 7, which is the steering committee. So what the building committee wanted to create is a steering committee that leads the committee, because this committee likely will be very large. So the steering committee would consist of a specific selection of people that would work to organize the larger committee. So their responsibilities would be agenda setting. Their responsibilities would be organizing meeting logistics, which includes scheduling, physical space, virtual space, any equipment that's needed, like the owl. They would also be the party responsible for creating subcommittees, and the chair would be the person likely responsible for seating subcommittees, right? So there's this, it's like a leadership group. So what they decided as a recommendation is that it has 6 members. Let me lay out what they decided, and then I'm gonna go back and tell you what I'm thinking on it too. So their suggestion was a chair and a vice chair. They did not have strong feelings about where that should come from, per se. I feel like those should be community members, but they didn't give that indication, at least not from my recollection. Do you recollect?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, turn your microphone on. He's coming to show us.
I'm
Thank you.
just following the trend.
Yes, just everyone will just keep it off. Yeah, so there was that. So the makeup of the steering committee is a chair, a vice chair, a community members. So, and they wanted to include a member carried over from the previous committee. That's another piece I think we need to discuss because we don't know that everyone's staying on. So I think if we outline that someone stays on and then we don't have anybody, that's right, that's kind of awkward as well. The superintendent or their designee, the board members and the town councilors. So, I want to take a pause there to see if there's any questions right yet.
I think it was mentioned also about voting rights for this
Mhm.
specific group.
Mm-hmm.
This steering committee for this building steering committee does not have voting rights. Am I correct?
Yes, so
Okay.
there was concern expressed that this committee, the steering, it gets weird because the word committee is used twice, that the steering group would have some sort of overarching voting authority that superseded the full committee, and that is not true. Their role is simply to organize the larger meeting. So they would have the community members, for example, would have the same voting rights that they would have as a board member. They don't get extra voting rights because they're on here. And there's no decisions made at this level. The decision is made at the full committee level. Does that make sense?
Is
Yeah.
there a reason why they want a board member and a town councilor to do the logistics on that meeting?
I'm thinking about as to what they're. I mean, I personally would think we would want one, but I don't know that they had a reason, like I can't recall that the community members had a strong reason why. I know we did,
Yeah,
as did the counselors at the table.
Okay.
But I don't recall that community members did.
I don't know. I think that it's just representative of the larger group.
Right, and it's part, for me, like when I think of it, it's because this was a function of the board and potentially the council moving forward. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So just to put out for right now, I will discuss it. Well, let me keep going. We'll discuss in a minute. Number 8 on there is quorum and voting. So this was the other piece that they recommended. Majority, the quorum is the same as our quorum rules. What they want to, they wanted to spell out, is it a voting member of the committee, of the large committee now, not the steering, but the large committee? A voting member is a community member, a school board member, or a town councilor, and should not include any school administration or teachers. And their worry for that, their reasoning for that is because the school administrators and teachers act more as an advisory role in their mind, and that this should be a committee of the community that votes accordingly, and that the staff members and administration should serve as more of a they should be there more to help facilitate conversation when needed, provide information, move forward. And so as I thought of this, when they were talking about it, I was thinking about our board committees that are just us and not community members. And really, that's kind of how our committees function now. for example, when we're in policy, if we have anything that we're going to discuss and talk about, that is really the role of the admin is to facilitate or to help move conversation along, provide us information that helps inform our discussion, but they're not really a committee member. Does that make sense? And so I could kind of see where they were going with this. And again, I think that the community members really wanted to have some ownership over this committee.
I feel like having a lot of teachers or staff that live within the community, it would become kind of a sticky situation. What do they act as then? Are they a community member or are they a teacher? So when they apply, is that how that's going to be determined? Like if they're applying as a teacher to be on the committee, or are they applying as a community member as on the committee?
It's a good.
I think that could be part of the, I think that could be part of the application, which are they, you know, they would have to make a choice perhaps, and we just would have to be aware. I mean, they can be, they're community members too. But if they want to act as a, you know, in their role as a teacher.
Does this committee meet after school hours, like on a voluntary basis? Like teachers who show up to this committee to give advice are not being paid to be there?
That is correct.
And they currently, and the past committee had a voting right? Or did they not?
Anybody that was on would have, but honestly, it's back to the attendance issue. Attendance was a problem. And so I'm not sure that there were teachers that we had administration on there. We had principals that served, but I can't think of a teacher that served on the committee. Can you?
Yeah, no, we had two teachers. And they're really, I mean, throughout the course of the meetings, there weren't that many votes
Yeah.
that were held, and the ones that were held were, I mean, consensus driven, really. I mean, that's kind of how the meetings went. There were some votes that were taken. Each member who was on, you know, the building committee had a vote. But it felt, you know, more like making sure we had consensus over a recommendation.
Yeah. So I apologize.
When
There
they
were
were
two
held.
teachers.
Mhm.
I apologize. There were two teachers.
I don't think it's fair if we have Scarborough teachers who are community members on this committee to make them dissect themselves and then pretend like they're not teacher advisors, but they're teacher community members. I don't think it's fair also to ask people to volunteer their time outside of school to show up to the committee. It's extremely disrespectful to say, come and give us your expertise at your own dime and dollar without being paid out of the goodness of your heart, but we're not going to let you participate fully. That's just, that would rub me the wrong way. And I don't know why anybody would volunteer for that.
Right. So, any other questions so far? All right. The last two things are, same as what we have in other committee documents, the meetings and records, again, the responsibility to post meetings, meeting agendas and meeting minutes within 3 and 7 days respectively. And then the last is public participation, which this is the opportunity for the public to provide public comment. One of the things that hopefully this document provides to the public is some understanding of the process. So I think at the last committee meeting, what was unfortunate is that there was a thought that it would be like a community dialogue. And it wasn't, right? Like none of our meetings are set up to be community dialogue driven. And it doesn't mean we won't have those opportunities like the joint counselor corner that we're discussing having, or the community forums we've discussed having. That's an opportunity to dialogue, but a public meeting is just not it. And so I think that this is a good refresher and a reminder for the public about that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll mention on bullet point number 10 is the same thing with the DEI committee a few weeks back about how may be permitted as opposed to will be permitted, or that was my only
Yeah, and I think we need to go back as a board, like separately from this and look at the policy because the policy says May. Yeah, and so we, as a policy committee, likely should take a look at that, knowing that you know, that we've discussed it as a concern. And then once, when and if we discuss it and bring it forward for a change for the full board and the full board votes on first reading and second reading, then we would have to go back through our governance documents and update.
We could just refer to the policy and then that whenever that's updated, it would be up to date.
Yeah, yeah, we could do that too. Can we make a note of that for policy meeting? Yeah, policy committee. Yeah, another policy. All right, so that is the full recommendation of the committee into the draft of the document. So are there any other questions right now? We have this on new business and I'm going to separate them in new business so it won't be one joint vote. And at that point, we can discuss our thoughts on this, our feelings on this. But for now, are there any other questions?
I'm just
So,
thinking,
yeah,
I don't know if
go
this was a question for
Yeah.
now or laughter.
ahead. No, go ahead.
You can
Yeah.
just tell me. So I was looking at the charge and maybe that's what we're talking later.
Thank you for
Okay.
bringing that up.
All right, you're
So, the charge is in red. Thank you. That is, I totally skipped over the purpose and the charge. So the purpose, let me back up to the top. Thank you. The purpose is the same. This is the purpose that was originally, written by the board, when the committee was formed. The only change into here is that at the time when it was written, it said K2. And so the committee is obviously looking at a K8 solution. So you see that that's written in there. That's been updated to say K8. Otherwise, it's the same. The charge that is in red, it's in red because this is the initial charge. And this is like a good segue into our next agenda item. I have a thought about where the charge should come from, and I guess I'll say it now and then we'll discuss it in a minute. I think that the charge of the committee really is going to come, in my mind, from two areas. The survey results that I hope we get, and then the second thing that I think is it's gonna require us to go back a little bit to move forward because we will have an entire new committee of people. So what I think we need to do is have, to me, it appears that it seems it would be Jeff and Todd and Diane to give a presentation about the deficiencies of the school, where they're all laid out. So you've got like these two things that would then make the charge. The added piece to this that's a little bit, that's new information is that there is interest on the town council to jointly own this committee, which is really fantastic. We've been really asking for that for quite a while now. And so the fact that there is an interest there is really, really exciting to me and makes this, gives recognition to the fact that this is a community-wide issue and not just our problem, right? It's not just us up here. It's really all 14 of us plus Tom, plus Jeff, plus Diane that are needing to work on this. So, I think when we look at the charge, I think that's something else we would want to consider is what the town council's thoughts are on this. And I think that based on my conversations with Counselor McGee, I think that the town council does feel similarly that a survey indicating how people would want to go forward would help to drive the charge as well, along with a presentation about the deficiencies and where we're lacking. Yeah.
So just to sort of reiterate for my brain to follow along with that,
Yeah.
we would essentially not have a charge to start, or we would have a governance process, a committee makeup process. How would that intersect with if the town council creates a joint committee, which would be fabulous. Would think that's absolutely the right route to go.
Yeah.
Would we have to redo the governance document with the town council? Like how, I don't want to be, having been bogged down in procedure on one committee, I would really like to streamline that process to the extent possible, so that this committee would get out of their way and let them do their work. But I also, we can't impose our will on the town council
Yeah.
in terms of the process for the committees either. Now, this process is very familiar.
Yep.
Because it's pretty basic parliamentary process. There's nothing that I think would be all that objectionable in here. But how would they feel about the composition? How are they gonna feel about the charge? I think would definitely have to come back to, and I think the survey
Mhm.
should inform that. But I don't know if there's anything else, the steering committee, how comfortable are they? So, my concern is, this is something that we adopt. I think this is a good process. Again, I have a couple of issues with a couple pieces of it,
Mhm.
but overarching, this looks good.
Mhm.
But then the town does the same thing. Did they change it? Then it comes back. I don't want to play ping pong with a policy document. As much as I love policy and I could spend all day there, that's not a good place or use of time for anybody.
Yeah, so I kind of, in my mind, well, first off, let me back up and say that we had the agenda posted and then I met with Nick, right? So it kind of was a little, or Counselor McGee, it was a little out of, out of order, I suppose, but, so the agenda was out there with the action item on there. What I think we could do is we could table that, and I do kind of, in my mind, this feels like almost like when you think about, the Senate and the House, right? Like you kind of banter back and forth until you come up with one. So I think tonight is our opportunity to banter this back and forth, come up with what we think is the document, and then we send it over to town council and let them have a crack at it. And hopefully, between the two, we can work on this offline, kind of get it to where we feel good about it for both bodies, and then both bodies could vote on it. But yes, I do think the committee, forming the committee, all of those pieces can happen.
That's what I was gonna ask, but we could
Simultaneously.
still do the makeup, because that makeup is very broad.
Mhm.
And that way we have a committee forming, and at the same time, this back conversation can happen while the two
Mhm.
bodies meet. So again,
Yeah.
I like process as much as
Mhm.
anybody else, as we all know, but I don't like it when it impedes progress.
Well, and I don't
That's-
think, yeah, and I think that all of us feel the responsibility and the pressure that we still need a school, right? And hopefully we can get to, for me, in my mind, I'm hoping we can get to a November 2024 referendum. And so I don't want us so bogged down in the details that we don't do that. All right, any further, you had a question?
Yeah, just question on the charge.
Yeah.
Is, should we have any or any bullet point on there regarding community forums and keeping the community involved? Is that something that belongs in there? Or is that just something that's gonna happen?
No, I definitely think that there's a place for that in
Okay.
there. Yeah. Absolutely. What are you thinking, Jillian?
I'm just thinking I think we can do some general stuff, but again, I do think that we need survey results so that we can really
Mhm.
narrow down. It could go in the notes for now, I think.
Yeah, because I think one of the things, for me personally, like as I reflect back on the process and what happened and when the community came in, one of the things that became evident to me is that the committee was working, the board approved, the board started talking to the town council about putting this on the agenda. During this time, we had very little community participation. Okay, we put this on the ballot. We had a little bit more, we had an uptick, but we still had limited community participation. Then the land site was announced, and then all of a sudden we had community participation. Okay, at that point, we were already on the ballot, and so it was too late for people to start making recommendations. We were well past that point. And so you had a community that felt like they weren't involved and weren't able to participate. And it was strictly about the timing. And so one of the things that has played in my mind is, where do we have check-ins along the way with the community to make sure that they feel like they are brought along? So that when they don't feel like they're coming in at the 11th hour with no input and no way to say anything. And so, yeah, community forums would be potentially a piece of that. And maybe they happen after, throughout the period when the committee makes a decision, maybe it looks like that. That I don't know, but I do think we have to bring the community along better,
Yeah,
in this
'cause I-
process.
I'm only saying that because, I think I mentioned this in our, when we had the joint committee meeting with us and the town council, that if we had had those community forums earlier in the process, it may have informed a different decision. Cause we got we got a lot of great feedback. A lot of input that yeah, it just was too late.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think moving forward, if we can get input. Oh, go ahead.
No, I definitely, I mean, I think that the committee would have wanted that right along as
Yeah,
well. I don't know how granular we want to get with the charge, but we could just, we could say seek maybe a variety of types of community feedback. I mean, whether
Mhm.
that's like straw polls or whatever. But, that could be, that should be part of the charge, I
Mhm.
think. Just-
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
And there might be natural decision points along the way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that as you hit those decision points, hey, this is what we think.
Yeah.
Are you on board?
Mm-hmm.
If the goal is to get something out for next referendum,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing it on here that
Mhm.
that's a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like for a timeline to be constructed by them also. Just to get it there for November.
So. All right. Okay. Any other questions for right now?
No, I don't think that, so I'm just gonna say my opinion on the
Yeah.
document. I don't like the carrying over committee member. I think
Mhm.
that the committee can decide themselves who the right member should be. I don't like the teacher limitation. I understand it, but there weren't enough teachers to like have a majority. And I just don't think it's fair, and I don't think you can bisect a teacher who lives in the community in any way that makes sense. I think it doesn't make sense to do anything final on this document unless and until the town council, if this
Mhm.
is a joint committee, also has input. But I do think it makes sense to get the committee process started, to get a committee seated while the governance gets worked out. Like, that's what I would support.
Thanks for that. All right. So there's no further questions for now. I'm gonna move on to, I know this for the public, just for the public's knowledge, I know this feels weird. We have a lot of heavy agenda items, a lot of big things that we're talking about. And we talk about them on the agenda and then we go to new business and we'll end up talking about them again. So I just want to kind of bring the public along in that process. So with that, agenda item 12.0 is the post-referendum survey. So as Carolyn mentioned, the finance committee and Kate did take a look at the budget, found some pots to pull, various pots to pull money from to do a survey. And the survey comes from a desire of the town council and the school board from our joint workshop to have a survey to I want to be very clear about this because we as a board have heard some feedback in the way of emails. There's been some feedback, public feedback that I've received personally about this survey. And I want to be very, very clear on what I understood my takeaway from our joint workshop was. And that is that the survey would not be to ask the community why they voted the way they did. That we were uninterested in hearing that because we know the answer. We don't need to pay to ask them why they voted. Instead, the survey would be forward focused and look at what people would support, what the community would support in the way of a school. So I just wanted to be clear on that point, but so I'm going to open it up for discussion right now. Is there any questions about the post-referendum survey? Anything outstanding with that you wanted to ask? Anything for the finance committee about the funding source?
So in our last finance committee,
Kate Polton basically said we can pull from a bunch of different places to get to that number. Which I think was like close to $20,000 to fund this survey. I'm hesitant because that $20,000 could be applied to other things like surveying land or whatnot. And as far as trust goes with the town, I think there's a lot of talk about how we're spending too much already. And in our conversation at our last workshop, Tom Hall had said that the surveys that they had put out for the community, they would only get like 600 people to respond to them. And I feel like that's not enough information for us, especially when you have a lot of people already plugged in and wanting to join this committee now to kind of get this going. So I'm hesitant because 20,000 might not seem like a whole lot in, you know, the big picture, but then it's also something that we can apply to November referendum or building.
Jen, I just wanted to speak to your comment about the sample size. I'm not a statistician, but I do know there is some math and some logic behind having, you know, getting 600 responses statistically equates to a majority of the town. I don't know all the math behind it, but I know there is some logic behind 600 sample size is actually probably not that bad. It sounds really small to my ears even, but I think as far as Diane, I saw you nodding your head here, but yeah, I think according to the experts, it provides a fair representation of how the temperature of the town.
Yeah, if I could just add my recollection of that conversation and then also knowledge around this particular area is that the value of going out and having a survey professionally done is they would send the surveys to participants that kind of mirror the demographics of the community versus just a random 4,000 people, because they're trying to come up with a sampling that represents the community. And then I also heard the town manager speak about how they were also sending out the same survey to anyone who wanted to fill it out so that they could compare, you know, does the general public opinion match or differ from the selected survey sample?
I am also not a statistician. I am also not a survey writer. Yeah, and I you know, I struggle with, you know, spending $20,000 that feels like, you know, we had discussion at the table and there was discussion at the building committee meeting about doing this via email instead and saving the money. And while on the surface that appears like it could be a good idea and could work, well, then you start drilling down to what about the people that don't use the internet and don't use email? How do they get to participate in the survey? How do we know? Because to my knowledge, and I could be mistaken, but I don't know that we have any statisticians or survey experts on the council or on the school board. And so I don't know how to derive a statistically valid sample. And I don't know how to write questions. And so I get bogged down and tangled in those details because it's not my expertise. And so I do, I personally, while I struggle with it, I also think that it's incredibly valuable data for the committee to move the charge forward. It's going to help us and the council to write a charge and to decide how this committee will move forward. And really, where I feel, I feel some pressure is that I don't want to keep spending money, and when I say spending money, I mean consultants, I mean, all of it that we spend to get a solution in front of the voters to continuously vote it down. We are out of time. We are already out of time. We know this for our kids. And so what I'm hoping happens is that, to Diane's point, when the survey goes live for anybody who's interested in filling it out, we hear a lot of feedback from that. And so we have a good solid direction to send the committee in so that we can hopefully put something up in November that passes.
And just another way of saying what you just said is it, and I'm as cheap as they come. So I don't like spending money either. But at the end of the day, I think it may save us money down the road, and we won't go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And like you
fair.
said, not
Mhm.
get to a no again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that if we do any sort of survey, it has to be done professionally, so it's validated, because data that's junk data, we can't rely on. We, as a board and a committee, I believe the building steering committee did their best to put forward the solution that they absolutely believed was the best solution. I have no doubts, and anybody who watched any of their meetings have no doubts that that building steering committee believed that this was the right solution. So I don't know how this board or we ask a committee to redo the same work without telling them any information about what needs to change.
Yeah.
Because we did our best. I mean, nobody wants us to do what we would consider to be a second best job, but unless we know where the fallacies were, and we can all speculate to what those are, and we have, but until we know statistically what we can actually get through the voters that will also address the needs,
Mhm.
we're wasting time, and we're dancing in the dark with not the right information. $20,000 is a big chunk of an ed tech, half teachers, starting teacher salary. Like, I'm very aware of what that dollar and cents makes, and that it's a lot of money. All of our money needs to be spent as efficiently and effectively as possible. But it doesn't make sense to we can't redo the same thing we did and expect the voters to pass it.
Right.
That's not realistic. And so we need the information that we don't have, which is what do they want that will meet our needs in order to move forward. So I support it, even though I don't like spending the money. I would rather be hiring another ed tech, or if we could find one, or another half a teacher.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to waste time, because I don't want to look at 2027 from this perspective without a concrete place to put those children. And I don't want to be a rented hall or a fake cobbled together school that we then have to tell the citizens we're going to redistrict them, because that's what's going to happen. And then we're going to put some of their children in a fake school and expect them to be okay with it. Because if you did that to me, I would be screaming from the outside.
All right, any other questions or comments on the survey? Before we move on to our next heavy topic. All right, 13, and this is the last one before we start into the action items. Okay, so 13.0 is the school board vacancy. On November 17th, Brian Marino, he resigned from the school board. He submitted the following statement that I will read. Dear Scarborough community, it is with a heavy heart and a sense of responsibility that I submit my resignation from the Scarborough Board of Education effective immediately. I have had the privilege of serving on the board, and it is with great regret that recent events have led me to make this difficult decision. I would like to address a matter that unfolded last night during a public workshop where I made the statement referencing hate groups in our town. I want to sincerely apologize to the community for any distress my words may have caused. Upon reflection, I realized that my comments stem from a moment of frustration and promptly took it back a few minutes later in the same workshop. My intention has always been to contribute to the unity of our community, and I deeply regret any hurt feelings that may have arisen from my remarks. I am fully aware of the importance of choosing my words carefully, especially in a public position, and I acknowledge that I fell short on that standard in this instance. I want to emphasize that anyone who truly knows me understands that building relationships and making positive contributions to our community are the values that I hold dear. As my first time serving in a public position, it has been a steep learning curve, and I have come to realize the significance of thoroughly considering my words, before expressing my views. In light of this, and to ensure the best interest of both the school board and the town, I believe that stepping down is the most responsible course of action. I hold immense gratitude for the support and unwavering dedication of my fellow school board members. I want to express my sincere appreciation for the collaborative efforts that we have shared. As I move forward, I am committed to finding new ways to positively contribute to this town that I truly love. My passion for this community remains unwavering, and I look forward to exploring new avenues for making a positive impact. I believe that my decision to resign will allow the board and the town to move forward without any distractions. I am sincerely grateful for the opportunity to have served the Scarborough community. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Brian Maiorino. So with his resignation, we have obviously a vacancy on the board. We have 2 places in the town charter that speak to vacancies. So can we go back to the slide deck? Thank you. Okay, so the first is this, which is section 801, and it's a lot of language up there. Essentially what it's talking about it's defining regular elections. As you can see, regular elections are defined as the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November and the second Tuesday in June. So what the rest of this speaks to is what happens when there is a vacancy. I'm sorry, let me back up. What happens with the extended terms? So if you recall last November, the community voted to move the school board referendum. So when we elect school board members to June. So because of that, every single one of us have an extended term. And so what the second piece of this speaks to is what happens if a vacancy occurs during the period between when the seat would have vacated because the term was up and June of the following June when their term would now set to expire. So we have this seat that Brian is sitting in, which is actually a seat that was vacated by Leanne Casalonis last year. So the seat would have expired in November. It would have been up for re-election in November. So this period in between November 7th and June 11th is what this speaks to. And what it says that if a vacancy occurs during that time, the board may appoint a qualified person. All right, so that's part 1. Can we go to the next slide? Part 2 is section 403, which speaks specifically to vacancies. The seat on our seat became vacant more than 6 months prior. So that first sentence applies to us. So it became vacant more than 6 months prior to the next election, the June 11th election. So that means that the vacancy shall be filled by a special election that is to be held no later than 60 days from when the vacancy occurred. So because there is a unique situation here with the term ending and that language regarding appointment, and we have this language that says we shall fill, we did seek 2 legal opinions, one from the town attorney, one from the school board attorney. Both were in agreement that the board can choose to may appoint, that's step 1. If the board chooses not to appoint, we would be required to hold a special election, which would have to take place by January 16th, 2024. Okay. As a piece of information, as an information point, I did reach out to town to find out what a special election costs. It's between $5,000 and $7,000 to hold a special election. Okay, so can we pull off of the slides now just for purposes of discussion? Okay, so I'm going to open discussion about this now. Typically I tend to not start off the discussions, but I would like to start off tonight if you'll permit me, because I do want to bring the public along and where we are in this process. So when the resignation happened, we did receive a very generous, very generous offer from Leanne Casalonis, who again is, as a reminder, Brian was filling her vacancy. She did offer to come back and finish out her term if we did want to make use of that appointment language that is in the documents. And I know, I do personally understand, I've spent the better part of whatever this has been, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it feels like 3 years, thinking about this. I mean, I know it feels strange and it feels like, it feels weird to a point, right? Because the public isn't a part of the process. And, really what it comes down to for me is that the public has elected us to make decisions that are sometimes really, really hard. And they elected us because they cannot be involved in all of the day-to-day inner workings of what goes on in our town government and what we're doing and what meetings are attending. And so they rely on us to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions are incredibly hard. And this is one of those times. It's just, for me, it's important to constantly remind myself that because we were elected because the public thinks we can do this. So, my vote tonight, is going to be to appoint Leanne. And the reason why is because honestly, if you think back, Leanne is the person that the community elected. So we're actually refilling what they asked her to do. They asked Leanne to serve in the role on the school board. She had to resign. She is now able to come back and finish her term. And so, that is kind of where I am. I know we'll have other discussions later, but, this is where I am. A special election does feel to me, like it would be a waste of taxpayers' money, $5,000 to $7,000 when we're looking to spend 15 to 17 or 20 on a survey feels a little bit of a waste. Today is December 7th. This would have to happen by January 16th. We have 3 federal holidays in between there. So you're talking about asking, community members to pull papers, run a campaign, the town staff to pull, to have ballots printed up in time for about a 5-week period from now. So it doesn't feel like that's time to sufficiently do that with 3 federal holidays in between. And, the amount of time it takes anyone to get caught up to speed in this job is pretty steep. It's a steep learning curve. It takes a while. We're talking about 6 months at this point. And by the time they're starting to get caught up, their term is over. Leanne, where we are fortunate with Leanne is that as a former board member and a former board chair, she can hit the ground running for us. And that is something that, I don't think we can overlook the importance of that, right? When we have as much work as we need to do, that is a huge selling piece. She has really served this community well in the past, and she has been incredibly dedicated to Scarborough. And I don't think that has ever come into play more and been more evident to me than right now. When we need her, she has stepped up and volunteered on her own. And so, for me, it's really her, all of this that leads me to say, and I know that there's somebody else that has expressed interest. I know we're going to hear about that later. And I want to say that this is not a reflection of any one person's abilities over another. That's not it. This is weighing what we have in front of us. This is weighing what I know the other person has in front of him. And it's an important year in a different way for him. And so this to me feels like the best path forward. And I know there will be another discussion about an application period, potentially doing that to fill this vacancy as through an appointment. One of the things that really, I heard quite a bit that it took me a long time to wrap my head around during the school process was the Downs was the foregone conclusion, and you made the data work to fit your needs and to fit your wants. And it took me finally, after the referendum, having a conversation with somebody who voted no, who explained it to me for me to get it. And I finally get it and I finally understand it. And what I'm afraid of is if we hold an application process when we have a really, really viable candidate who is offered and volunteered, are we paying lip service? Are we doing exactly what they told us we were doing during the building process? Are we holding a process to say we want the community to participate when we know who the foregone conclusion is? And if the answer to that is yes, I don't think we can do an application process. We are trying so hard. We are saying, I want to build trust with the community. I want to build trust with the public. And if we hold a process when we have a desired outcome, I feel like we're doing exactly what they've accused us of. And I worry about that perception more so than I worry about anything else. All right, so we have a legal opinion that outlines our duties as board members. This is where I'm at right now. And I'll stop there. Yeah. Go ahead.
I agree with you about the special election. Ideally, we would have an election. That's how the process is supposed to work. It's not feasible to have one in 5 weeks. It's not economically viable. And we all know the dismal turnout we get at special elections. So it's not even like we would get a large turnout. So I don't believe that that is a good path. The voters voted for this charter with this language for this very specific circumstance of, I mean, this is the only time this circumstance would even apply to this weird board extension. They told us to appoint somebody, so I think we should do that. Where I don't disagree that the person that has stepped forward has a lot of qualities that I think are self-evident. I have never worked with her personally, but she clearly, I think you've outlined her qualifications very well, and I don't disagree with anything that you said about that. Where I do part ways is I cannot in good conscience vote for anybody today because we are just for the very first time discussing this as a board. We're just for the very first time telling the public what the process is going to be. If somebody is interested and they want to be on the Board of Education, which sometimes makes people laugh at me, they should have the opportunity to apply. They should have the opportunity to step forward. If we had known before today, we don't even know that we're not holding an election yet. That's a decision point that gets made today. So if we don't tell people what the process is, how can we have input? Like, we have a duty to allow input for residents. They should weigh in. I think there is a very simple process we could follow. I think we could solicit applications. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be a letter of interest. Any qualifications you want us to consider, you can get it to us by next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. We have a cutoff. That information should go online. The voters should have ability to participate if they wish. They can read the information that we'll have access to. They can come to their own conclusions. They can email us, which we know they know how to do. They can show up at the board meeting and they can give public comment, which we also know that they know how to do if they're interested. And then I think we fully vet and discuss the nominees and the applicants publicly, the way that this process is supposed to hold out. I don't disagree that I think it would be hard to find somebody who is a former board member who could hit the ground running and who can do good work and who has been vetted by the voters. I think that, I mean, that is actually the most important thing to me. She's already voted in. And you know, this is not for me personal to her at all. I have a great deal of respect for her. And so that's not what this is about, but I cannot in good conscience vote for her or anybody else. We know there's at least one other person that wants to be considered. I know that before I joined this board, I would never have occurred to me to email you to say, I'm interested in this, and you would have no way to know that I was interested. So we don't know who's out there and who wants to participate. And I think we have to give people the opportunity to participate if they want to. And then we have to have a full and frank discussion here in front of people about who's going to serve, so that at least the public knows why and has full consideration. And I understand it feels like lip service. I know that you served with her, and you have a really good sense of her as a person. And I have a sense of her as a person from, you know, a citizen who watched the board. And again, I have nothing negative to say about her. It's not about her at all. But I don't believe that we can move forward this quickly without at least giving the public an opportunity to weigh in. I need to hear from the residents of Scarborough, if we're gonna not vote on them, what they want, if they want to tell us. And yes, the timing is really unfortunate. People are distracted right now, but I don't think that we can do it without at least asking. I mean, I think transparency has been a value of this board. Public input's a value of this board. We have to stay true to those values.
Thank you, Freyla.
I agree with some of what both of you said, mostly Shannon. And to save time, I won't say everything you said, but I agree. And I think that the way that it was, you know, they gave us the ability to appoint someone in this one scenario, if that happened, because I don't think it'll happen again. so it can't happen again. So the town has already said, yes, you have this power to do it. So I think that we do have the power to do it, and we can appoint, because they already gave their input on it, and they voted and said yes. So that's the only thing it's not that I don't agree with you. I think we should tell people this is, and can let them know what we're planning to do, thinking about doing. I agree with that, and not necessarily decide it tonight, but just let people know. And if somebody wants to, I'm sorry, throw their, hat in the ring, so be it. But I also think that we shouldn't feel bad that we are making a decision, because they give us the power to do that. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, John.
Having worked with Leanne, I think she would be a great fit, and I can vouch for her also. And her and I didn't actually agree on everything either. But I think her contribution in conversations, in discussions have been very valuable to the community. And I do like the fact that she has been elected. She has been chosen by the people. And, you had pointed out that the charter allows us to do this. You had pointed out that people have elected us to make these important decisions so that they don't have to. It's such a short time frame to fill this spot that I think it would make sense for us to appoint somebody. And the fact of the matter is, even during election time, people aren't running to fill these seats. So I think the fact that we're going to be, if we go through an application process, it might still just be those two people that have expressed interest, because no one's running to these seats, like I said. So I think, I would be in support and in favor of appointing Leanne. And same with the other person who would like to. It's nothing against this person. I think it's just, we already know, and this person has already been kind of vetted out for us.
Thank you, Jenna. Come down this way. I'm just going to, yeah.
I'm thinking. It's funny because I came in with one train of thought, and now it's moving to another train of thought. My initial reaction was, just given all the issues with the town, I just wanted to make sure and that we are being fully open and giving the public the ability to weigh in. So my initial thought was, let's discuss it tonight. I completely agree. I talked with Leanne last night, and I met her for the first time, and lovely, lovely person. And I didn't realize that she'd been a former chair of the board as well. So extremely qualified. And I think she's a great candidate, and ever so grateful that she would step forward. And so where my mind is stuck, yes, the charter allows us the ability to appoint. I just still have this gnawing thing in the back of my head about allowing the public to at least, seeing as this is the first time this has ever happened, hopefully the last time this will ever happen, but we're setting a precedent of sorts. So we just want to make sure whatever we do now is, we give the town the opportunity to weigh in. And so, yeah, is my mind made up as to who I want to vote for? Yes. So is your compelling, your rationale you gave compelling? Yeah. What's the point of opening it up? Although my mind is open, to other candidates as well. But I think we have an extremely qualified person that I would wholeheartedly support. So, yeah, so you've given me a little more food for thought, Shannon. I'm going to continue mulling. Take it away.
I mean, similar to Carolyn, I came in with a fairly strong opinion of, and I think actually both Brayla and Shannon made super compelling arguments. In fact, everybody has had something valuable to say. I struggle because there is, first of all, with an election, it is like under 6 months of service, and then there's no guarantee that person would run or be elected again in June. And so I don't think it's a good use of resources, nor do I think it's fair to anybody to squish that in over multiple federal holidays and school vacation and everything else. And then to ask the public to come out and vote in the middle of January. So I do see appointment as the most logical choice. I agree that we can't make that decision for who tonight. I do think we need to get, allow the public to, and encourage the public to weigh in. As for an application period, Shannon, you make a compelling argument. Leanne was elected to this particular seat. And that makes it so, and she is obviously qualified. I don't need to go over her qualifications. I'm that was a wonderful offer for her. I do think that I would worry about voting on it tonight in particular, especially since we're just discussing it. But yeah. Anyway, thank you for all your input.
Thank you.
No, it's already obvious, but just want to put my name
No.
out there. Yeah. I know Leanne has more experience, but I guess I also kind of do too. Been here for almost 2 years. I've been trying to listen to what's going on the board for that time, and just getting an idea of things. So I definitely would be kind of acclimated and ready to hit the ground running. And I know it's probably not the best reason, but this term is only 6 months, and I'll be off to college anyway in 6 months too. So then the voters can vote on someone after that. But I'd be a young voice, could give a different type of perspective. I definitely am open-minded to viewpoints from everyone in the town, and I definitely don't want to make up my mind on every issue when I'm walking into a meeting. It's good to hear other voices. I've enjoyed being on the board, and I've had pretty good attendance. I think I've made almost every meeting since I've been here. And also an appointment saves money too, so that's a plus added too, but just want to put my name out there.
Thank you, Colby. Very well said. One last, Grace, did you have something you wanted to say? All right. All right, so if there is no other questions right now, so just as a point of information, if there's anybody interested in,
Making a motion to table?
if there is I'm trying to find my words, I'm sorry. If there is an, desire by somebody to motion to table anything, just for a point of information, what happens when something is tabled, it ends all discussion immediately. So, that would include any of the tablings we've discussed so far and up to and including the vacancy. So if there is that motion, there is no further chance to discuss. Okay.
So do we need to discuss? Well, if we table it, then what happens? We discuss again at the next meeting? That we just, I feel like we should have a plan of action so we don't end in the same spot next time.
Did you have something? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a point of order. There's a couple of things that can happen with tabling. You can kill a motion by tabling it eventually. It can be picked up off the table after the next point of business. It will exist to the next meeting until the end of that meeting, and then it would be killed off automatically. Or it can be tabled to a specific time period or time frame. It doesn't have to be a date. It can be an event, but you can table it until such a something happens. So tabling has options.
So I think what she's trying to say is that there could be a specific motion that lays out next steps. Yeah. So to your point, you would have a clear, it appears to me you would have a clear understanding. if someone chose to do so.
So do we want to discuss? I don't know what we're all in favor of. Do we want to table until the next meeting and vote then and allow for public comment? Are we interested in pursuing accepting?
Just a point of
applications?
order.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
we need to
please.
wait until we're voting because we're
Yeah.
still in discussion and then we're
That-
gonna move to the
okay.
voting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. And then Jillian, you had a question.
No, I was just going to, no, I was just going to say, we do have a Mrs. Roberts rules too, huh?
Someone's giving me a run for my money next door. All right, is there any further questions? All right. So, agenda item 14 is new business. 14.1 is to, motion to act on the building steering committee governance document. I think, I would like to motion to table this. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Got you back.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion? I would like to make a motion to table this until we can get feedback from the town council and provide our feedback as well.
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion, I'm sorry, ends discussion. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous, thank you. Okay, agenda item 14.2 is a motion to act on the recommendation of the building steering committee for committee makeup. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? So again, the committee makeup, it's anyone who commits to the attendance expectations, anyone who commits to serving on a subcommittee, and anyone who submits an application by a date that we determine would be eligible to participate on the committee.
If this is going to be a joint with town council, shouldn't we do the same and have them, let them, afford them the opportunity to discuss it as well, and then, you know what I'm saying, just like we're doing for the first part, would it make sense for us to just take over the second one and then not give them a chance to have any input?
Yeah, so are you motioning to table?
I was just asking if,
Oh.
I would love to. Motion to table.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, so we still have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, so both of those will send over to the town council and pull back in front of the board for vote. All right, agenda item 14.3 is to act on the post-referendum survey. Do I have a motion to approve the post-referendum survey?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, it's unanimous, thank you. 14.4 is a motion to act on the request for nominations to fill a vacancy on the board created by a resignation, term to expire in June of 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
But did we table that? Can't we not do that?
Well, you've got to open it first.
Oh.
I need a motion in a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I move to table the motion until the December 21st meeting, which is our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Did you want to put something in?
Second.
I was gonna do that next. I would substitute. I was gonna make a new motion to do that, but I can do that. I can do it together.
Yeah.
I would also motion to solicit applications from the public by publicizing in all means we have our webpage and our social media accounts and requesting that the town send an email if they're willing, asking anybody who's interested in serving on the board to submit a letter of interest detailing why they want to serve and what qualifications they have by Wednesday at 5 PM.
Point of order. Wouldn't that be oh,
Amendment.
great.
It's a new motion.
A new, well, okay, so you're changing the motion.
No, I'm not changing the motion. I'm making a new motion and within the context of this motion. It's a different motion. I'm hijacking the motion.
Isn't,
No, it's
yeah,
not
it's
an
not-
amendment.
So
It's not an
my
amendment.
understanding is the first vote would be about whether or not we decide to appoint, and then the second would be to have an application process.
That would be a substitute. Yeah, yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Although I motioned to table, so I was gonna motion after this. After the table motion was voted on. I thought that was the appropriate procedure, but I can do it in either order. So what I think we should do is vote on the tabling motion.
But we don't have a motion on the table to take applications. We don't
And
have a
then-
motion on the agenda.
Oh, so then,
So it should be one
so I should do as one.
one
Okay.
thing. Do you see
So
what
I'm
I'm
gonna keep
saying?
talking.
Okay, so as a point of information, let me just clarify what's going on here. So Freyla is trying to make a motion to table the the appointment. She wants to, in addition to tabling it to December 21st, she wants to start accepting applications as a board. We don't have a motion, we don't have a new business item to accept applications. So this is going to be one long run-on motion. Yes, tell me what you're thinking.
I don't know, but it just doesn't sound right. This is unprecedented, so I think,
Yes.
I think I'm struggling with I mean, if I don't know. I think it's two different things to me, like we're either changing the motion to accept self-nominations or applications, and moving the vote to a time where we could review applications, or we're tabling. I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of it.
All right, Diane, you might have to. I'm gonna phone a friend, because I always look to you when I need help. I think, let me walk through my thought process, and then, could the item be amended and then tabled? Yeah, I think you have to yeah, I think that's what I'm looking to Diane, because you're becoming my runner-up, Robert's rules, but prior, yeah, maybe you're gonna tie with Diane.
Yeah.
I think she's gonna have to, or Jeff, yeah, you too, maybe, I think she's going to have to amend the main item, and then she's going to have to table the main item. Is that your understanding as well? Because she wants an application process. That's what she's trying to get at.
Which doesn't exist.
Correct. On the new items.
It would. That's the tricky part. I mean, there's no established process for.
Correct.
Substitution is an established process. I'll bet you on that.
No, I think you mean, do you mean there's no established process for the application?
Well, for, you have the power to appoint,
Right.
but there isn't a process that's spelled out on who to select when you're appointing. So, and that was, that's
Oh.
a question that I have, and a point that's already been made, which is, the public process for a board member, is through an election. And
This is discussion and I did a motion to table. So like I object to any sort of discussion going on right now because
okay.
that's out of order. I think we can get clarification on the motion to substitute. And I'm not trying to shut you down, Jeff. Like I know what
So-
you're saying, but we have the right to appoint, so we have a right to control the process like that. We can figure that out.
Yeah, but I actually think now that Jeff has said that, though, I actually think that when I reviewed this prior, coming into this meeting, I actually think that that's right. You don't, because the process isn't what the motion is. The motion is appointing. It doesn't tell us how we appoint. There's not, to your point, there's not a process spelled out.
Right.
So I think you can just table.
Well, I'm tabling
You
it, but I'm-
table it till the 21st and then we work out the process
that's fine.
of taking
I- but
applications
I'm indifferent with
afterwards.
Yeah, I would like to appoint at the next meeting.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to, the motion is to table this, excuse me, until the
Yeah.
December 21st meeting. All right,
But
so,
then would that
and that's
allow you
with
to
or
act
with-
on that? Cause you're changing the motion, so, right, so what I'm understanding is if you're changing the motion to create this process for public input on an appointment, then that would happen prior to the then tabling.
that was my question first, yeah, do we?
Yeah.
Okay,
Prior to then tabling
okay.
for next meeting.
I don't think we have to, but I think for purposes of clarity for everybody at this table and for the public, I think what we should do is we should have you amend the motion.
Okay,
Let's vote on it and then let's have you table it.
okay.
Because
That's
I
fine.
don't think we have to, because I
I-
think that
I
the
agree.
process isn't spelled out, but I want to be sure everybody knows what they're voting on.
Yes.
And that's what I'm worried where we're at right now.
Well,
So,
and if you were to table it, discussion ends.
Ends right
Yeah.
then, and you
So
can't
that-
be discussing.
So if Freyla amends the motion to include a application period
Mm-hmm.
and and we vote, yes, we're gonna do that, then it tables, then we are effectively voting to have an application period. If that amendment does not pass, then we go back to the main motion.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
okay.
And just for I'm sorry, just for my sake, if we vote for the amendment that Phil is proposing, how long will can we still appoint on a December 21st? If we have to
We would
create
retake the motion up.
Yeah, you would do it in two votes.
okay.
So
okay, I
let's,
just want to make sure, do we have to create a process and all that will make it take longer? Is what I'm worried about.
longer than December 21st, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, so how about you go ahead and offer your amendment, which is when you want applications received by, like, spell out what you want here.
Should I go back to the beginning?
Yes, except don't talk about the table.
I hear you. All right, so the motion that I'm proposing, or the amendment or substitution, however you want to call it, would be to solicit applications. Essentially having members of the public submit a letter of interest, laying out why they want to serve on the Board of Education and their qualifications. Those would be received or would be due by Wednesday at 5 p.m. And I can get that date. I didn't pull that date up. But essentially next Wednesday, so it's 6 days from tonight,
The 13th.
the 13th of December. After that, as soon as possible, whatever materials we receive in whatever form they come would be uploaded onto our website so that members of the public could see who is interested. And if they have feedback for the board, they could give it to us the way they usually do, which is emailing our email address. Or they could show up at our next meeting, December 21st, to provide any feedback or commentary that they have for our consideration. Then at the next board meeting on December 21st, we would consider all of the applications that we received in the time frame, including those we've already received. And we would have a full and frank discussion in the public about who's applied, about their qualifications, and about who we support. And then that would, again, it's not a perfect process, but that would allow the public input and have the same information that we have. And that, so that at the December 21st meeting, we would consider applicants and vote on a nominee. And then seat a new board member. That would be my amendment.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of the amendment to have an application process? Okay, so all opposed? 1, 2. We have a split vote. So it fails.
Or actually.
1, 2. Oh, we did have 4.
It's 2-4.
Okay. I'm pausing because you're looking at me like you're, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna return, so the motion fails, so I'm gonna return back to the main motion, which is to act on the recommendation of the Building Steering Committee for the, I'm sorry, to act for the request for nominations to fill a vacancy on the board created by a resignation, term to expire June of 2024. So we're back there to the main motion now. So is there any further discussion on that? Do you have a? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna,
we-
well, I'm
okay.
waiting.
Okay, so are we now, okay, so now we could go back to deciding whether we're going to vote on it tonight or table it until next meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
because there's no application process now.
okay,
Because that failed.
okay.
So is there discussion about the nominating now or tabling that you'd like to have? That anybody would like to have?
Probably table it.
Well, my
So
concern
I'm gonna
now is we're
motion-
tabling without a process because the
Yeah.
process just failed.
I
So-
would say let's vote.
So,
It seems
Yeah,
a
I
little
think so.
soon to vote on
Yeah,
it all now.
and all right,
okay, all right, so are we done? No more discussion? All right, so all in favor of the motion to act on the request for nominations to fill a vacancy on the board created by resignation? 3. All opposed? Okay, Jillian
No, I
and John,
did.
are you
did.
voting no?
so, sorry, so if we vote, what happens if like we don't pass it tonight? We moved it to, the idea would be to table it if we want to give it,
No,
Till the
if
next
it
meeting.
doesn't pass tonight, we have a special election, January 16th.
oh, okay,
That is that is the layout that's in the town charter. So we just took a vote that
Yeah.
failed.
Yeah.
So we are now holding a special election.
no, wait a second.
John or Jillian voted.
Jillian
Yeah.
did not raise her hand.
Yeah, I had, it. Yeah.
That's what he said.
Okay, all right, so you clear now?
Would you like me to
So-
call the vote?
Yes, can
Yes,
you call it one by one? Thank you.
Miss Gammon,
Wait, hold on, can you just tell us what we're voting?
Okay, we're
Okay.
voting on the act act on the request for nominations to fill a vacancy on the board created by a resignation term to expire June of 2024. So we would act on the nomination, we would appoint someone this evening. You're voting to appoint someone this evening. Which we have a candidate in front of us.
Act on request for nomination.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what the,
Right.
yeah. Yeah,
Would,
that's
would we
what's,
be
not
able
to
to split
say
that?
So that means we're asking for nomination. From us, like tonight, we're gonna nominate somebody.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Just the wording.
thank you.
So hold on, so as people know what they're voting on. This is not voting on the nomination, they're voting on to start considering the nomination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without a self-nomination, though, how can you possibly appoint somebody for the process that you're voting on? You know, presupposes the person has self-nominated, who's just that process. So you
Mhm.
have no part.
No.
Self-nomination.
I
would
think
like
this
to
is
see
what I think I would like to do.
I-
Because there is a lot of confusion as to what just has occurred. I would like to take 5 minutes and recess and give me a minute to just collect myself and my thoughts and determine our next steps because before we vote.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
okay? So I'm making a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
I second that.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay. Welcome back. Okay, so we are back to the main motion, which was an act to act on the request for nominations to fill a vacancy on the board created by a resignation, term to expire June of 2024. Is there any discussion?
I would like to make a motion to table this to the 12/21 meeting.
Okay, so there's a
Second.
table. Second. Okay, all in favor of tabling? Those opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. So this has been tabled. The act to request, to act on the request for nominations to fill the vacancy has been tabled until the December 21st meeting. All right. Agenda item 14.5 is the first reading of policy JKAA, which is the use of physical restraint and seclusion. So Frayla, I'll turn this to you.
This was a statutory fix that we went over. This is the second reading. After the first reading, there was no comments from this board. There were no changes or real discussion at the policy committee level. All of the changes in this statute are statutory, really required. And it just goes into the specific procedures. And then there's the next document is actually the procedure. This is just the main policy. And then there's an attachment on the next one that we'll vote on, but there's nothing. There are some substantive changes to the policy from our original policy, but they're all legally mandated and we don't have a choice on whether we do them or not. We have to follow the state law.
All right.
I did have one. Oh, am I allowed
No.
to ask a question?
Let me do a motion first. Hold on. one
You
second.
do your
Do you have a
motion.
motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, any discussion?
Okay. I was just curious. I was looking at section, oh, hopefully I'm on the right one. 2A1. Make sure I'm on the right. The procedures on physical restraints and
Oh, that's the next one.
that's the next one. I
Yeah.
apologize. I'm
No, it's okay.
on the wrong one. Okay.
So no
Okay.
questions for JKAA?
No.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 14.6 is the first reading of policy JKAAR, procedures on physical restraint and seclusion.
Exactly what I said for JKAA. This is the actual specific procedures that are laid out, that are required by law, and happy to take questions.
Got the right one.
Oh,
All
wait,
right.
let me motion first. Do I have a
Okay.
motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Okay, here we go. So section 2A1, permitted use of location of seclusion. I was just curious, in the last sentence, it says the seclusion must end immediately upon the cessation of the imminent risk of serious physical injury to the student or another person. Is there a definition, or do we need a definition of imminent risk, or is it evident?
I think it's pretty evident.
Okay.
This statute is extremely, I'm very reticent to make any changes. It's statutorily required by both federal and state law. They're controlling on both levels. With the language specifically, and imminent risk is defined in law. And so if it
Okay.
ever becomes a question, I think there's a lot of case law out there that actually defines imminency, imminent risk. So that's a legal term kind of art that would be understood and would not be open to interpretation. I think the folks who use restraints in schools there's a lot of training requirements. And so they're trained to know what imminent risk is. So
Okay, so
I'm
that's-
confident that the language is tight.
Okay,
And I
that's my
really-
question is, do
yeah.
they know what that means?
Yes,
Okay.
and this statute is like that language specifically is statutorily required, like it's.
Perfect. Is there any other questions, any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 14.7 is the first reading of policy JEA, compulsory attendance. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, Frayla, go ahead.
We had the statutory age at 7, the law changed the statutory age at 6, so now this policy conforms with state law, which mandates that children to school at age 6.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the first reading?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We're unanimous. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 14.8 are appointments of 14.8.1 is the Wentworth School co-curricular stipends.
So there are four positions here. Junior Game Masters Club, two for Yearbook Club, and Jim Dandy's instructor. So they're outlined in your packet.
Perfect. Do I have a motion to approve the Wentworth School co-curricular stipend as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 14.8.2 is the middle school co-curricular stipend.
These are for the co-advisors for the Builders Club.
Do I have a motion to approve the middle school co-curricular stipends as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Did you vote? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 14.9 is meeting minutes. I'm going to bundle 14.9.1 and 14.9.2, which are the business meeting minutes of November 2nd, 2023, and the workshop meeting minutes of November 16th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. It's unanimous. Okay, agenda item 15.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you. Have a great evening.